Welcome, I'm Rabbi Phil Bressler of Beit Am in Corvallis, Oregon. And this is the daily summary video for the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch Yomi Daily Halakha Learning Project, covering the passage from Siman 101 Seif 1 to Siman 102 Seif 1. I hope your Pesach Seder was lovely, and I want to encourage you to buckle up for today. We're going to talk about preparation on Yom Tov for subsequent days. And there's a great deal in order for this to make any sense at all that I'm going to need to define and explain in advance. So first, let's define some terms. The Kitzur talks about the first day and second day of Yom Tov. Yom Tov means literally good day, and it's a Jewish holiday. So all Jewish holidays are called Chagim, festivals, and this includes what we kind of conceptualize as minor holidays, things like Hanukkah and Purim, on which there are no work restrictions. But the 6 festivals that are specifically commanded in Torah are additionally called Yom Tov. These are Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret, Pesach, and Shavuot. And on these 6 festivals, we also get additional work restrictions that apply. Now, additionally, the tradition has been to celebrate these Yom Tovim for 2 days outside of the land of Israel due to some ambiguity around the sighting and sanctification of the new moon. Each Jewish month begins with a new moon. Now, before the calendar was all calculated out and fixed, we used to have witnesses come and testify that they'd seen the new moon, and then Rosh Chodesh would be retroactively declared. Now, the second day of celebration, what it does is it allows some wiggle room in case the witnesses don't show up on that first day. You're guaranteed, if you celebrate 2 days, to have celebrated properly on at least one of the 2 days, and that has a ripple effect. If you were to be off with your declaration of Rosh Chodesh, it would make all of the days, all of the holidays through the month off by one. So all the Chagim, or all the Yom Tovim, are celebrated for 2 days, with a couple of exceptions. Yom Kippur is only 1 day because 2 days of fasting would be too much of a hardship. And Rosh Hashanah is 2 days, even in the land of Israel, because of both its heightened importance as the beginning of the entire year and also the established tradition. Another term that's important to define is milacha. What is it that you can and can't do on these days? So milacha is frequently translated as work, but in the sense of specifically prohibited labors on Shabbat and on Yom Tov, not necessarily work in any sort of contemporary sense. There are 39 categories of milachot, and I'm sure we'll go into details on this when we get to the section on Shabbat. All of these 39 categories are prohibited on Shabbat. They're also prohibited on Yom Tov, except for cooking. Cooking specifically for same-day use, not for any time afterward. So an important corollary from this is that you can't prepare on day 1 of Yom Tov for day 2 of Yom Tov. You can cook on day 1 for day 1, but not cook ahead for day 2. Now, there's some practical realities that we face given these rules. Preparing in advance for 1 day without melacha takes some amount of planning. If you've ever tried to prepare on Friday for Shabbat, you know what that is like. It's doable, but takes some planning. Preparing in advance for 2 days without melacha is trickier, but also doable, like if you have a 2-day Yom Tov in the middle of the week. The Kitzur, and beginning in Siman 101, states these rules, and it adds that it's okay to just cook more than you need on day 1 for day 2, not explicitly cooking for the next day, but if you just make way more than enough on day 1, you're permitted to subsist on day 1 leftovers on day 2. Now the Kitzur covers some more details. It's not just about cooking. Don't do anything really on day 1 to prepare for day 2. That includes things like bringing water, setting out candles, etc. If a non-Jew brings you something otherwise eatable on day 1, and admittedly this is a bit of a corner case, you can't handle it right away if there's any sort of suspicion that that item was picked or caught on the same day, because that would be a benefit from transgression. That would be benefiting from a prohibited melacha on that Yom Tov. But you could eat it on day 2. That's provided if it's just left for you, like if it's a gift though, or if it's intended as a sale, That's still prohibited as day 2 because that would be benefiting from a transgression as well. There just a couple of notes on this passage in Siman 101. There are several references to Rosh Hashanah as a possible exception to these rules. Rosh Hashanah is considered Yoma Arichta. It's one long day, but you still can't cook for day 2 on day 1. Also, references to what's called the Tichum as grounds for violation. This is the Shabbat and Yom Tov boundary. It's the max distance that you can travel from your starting points at the beginning of Shabbat or Yom Tov in any given direction. Kitzur covers rules about milk that's milked on Yom Tov, which I'm not totally sure I understand. I don't have much lived experience of dairy farming. Also rules about lighting wicks as well. These are presumably oil lamps, which I don't use and also don't have much experience with. We get to the very beginning of Siman 102 today, which brings up another important practical reality that we'll go into much more detail with tomorrow. What about when Yom Tov falls right before Shabbat, beginning either Wednesday night or Thursday night? Now, that's not the case this year. Pesach begins Friday night, so preparing for Pesach is just the same as preparing for Shabbat. But say Rosh Hashanah or another 2-day holiday begins Wednesday night. You can't cook on Yom Tov except for that day, so you can't cook ahead for Shabbat. Now, are you supposed to just prepare everything on Wednesday during the day and eat cold, 3-day-old leftovers for Shabbat? No, that would not be dignified and worthy of Shabbat. So what we do is we utilize a halachic device called Eruv Tavshilin. Now, Eruv means mixing, Tavshilin is cooking, because what we're going to do is mix, as it were, our pre-Yom Tov cooking with our Yom Tov cooking for the purpose of preparing for Shabbat. The way you make an Eruv Tavshilin is you take something cooked and something baked, 2 items. Usually this is done with a hard-boiled egg and a piece of matzah, the year-round kind usually. If you've ever wondered what the not-for-Passover use matzah is for in the store, this is one way it gets used. These 2 items are good because they keep well, and we'll see tomorrow why that's important. So what you do is on Erev Yom Tov, so in our example, Wednesday night, not further in advance because the effect only lasts 1 day. What you do is you set those 2 items aside, recite the bracha, the blessing al mitzvat eruv, and the declarative formula stating your intent that the Kitzur transcribes for us. And what this effectively does is extend or mix your pre-Yom Tov cooking, because now you've started the pre-Yom Tov, you've started cooking for Shabbat on some time that was pre-Yom Tov. You're doing it still on Wednesday. You've begun cooking, and any cooking that you do on Yom Tov won't be new cooking. It'll be a continuation of your pre-Yom Tov cooking. That gets you out of the category of the same day Yom Tov cooking only. And now whatever you cook on Yom Tov can be served on Shabbat. If that's confusing, I recommend rewinding the video a little bit, using YouTube's functionality to slow me down a little bit and going over it very slowly with your Kitzur in hand. That's all for today, and we'll cover these topics in greater detail tomorrow. As always, our learning is dedicated to Rabbi Shlomo Gansfried, the author of the Kitzur, and the historic Jewish community of Uzhhorod, Ukraine. Thanks for hanging in there today, and we'll see you tomorrow.